But I'm really excited to be joined by our next guest, Roz Keith. In 2013, her son came out as transgender, and while she was helping him navigate the transition socially, emotionally, psychologically, and medically, she also was focusing on how she could help other people in the transgender community through those situations as well, and provide help to the greater community and raise awareness on transgender issues. We're pleased to be joined by Roz, the executive director and the founder of Stand with Trans, with us now on the Megacast. Roz, thank you for being with us today.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's my pleasure.
Appreciate having you on. So let's start off by talking about the second annual Trans Empowerment Month in 2021. This is a celebration that's aiming at raising awareness for gender diversity, empowering youth, and educating the community on gender-related issues. Tell us where you came up with the idea for Trans Empowerment Month and why you initiated that.
This was one of the positive outcomes of COVID. In the past, beginning in 2015, we held an all-day trans empowerment workshop. So it was basically a conference for trans youth. And then a couple of years in, we decided to add parents into the mix because they needed information to get educated and learn more so they could support their children. And the event grew. It was here in Metro Detroit. When COVID hit last year, we recognized that we couldn't do this signature event in person any longer. And how would we translate that to a virtual setting that wasn't going to burn people out by having all day content in a virtual format? So we came up with the idea of spreading out the content we would normally make available, adding to it, and then dispersing it throughout the month. So we're still able to deliver the same kind of content and services, and more so than we could in a one-day event. And as such, we came up with a Trans Empowerment Month because there are one, maybe two sessions a day throughout the month. You don't have to sit in front of your computer for more than an hour or two, and they're really dynamic, educational, a lot of interactivity. And while our audience is trans youth and their families, in particular parents and caregivers, it's really for anyone who wants to learn more, folks who work with youth, educators, school staff, medical professionals, mental health providers, really, anyone you can think of who might interact with young people. And it just gives you a better understanding of what they're going through, a different perspective on gender diversity. And because it is such a marginalized group, we want more people to be educated, and we know that the education leads to greater support.
We're joined by Roz Keith, the executive director and the founder of Stand with Trans, with us today on the Megacast. Stand with Trans is a 501c3 nonprofit whose mission is to provide the tools needed by transgender youth so they will be empowered, supported, and validated as they transition to their authentic life. The organization was founded in 2015 and continues to do great work to this day. And I loved the point that you made on providing education to people throughout the community as well, because certainly there's been greater visibility in recent years, especially over the last year or two, for the trans community, for the non-binary community, and in general for the LGBTQ plus community as well. But transgender isn't something new. Non-binary isn't something new. There have been plenty of people throughout history who have been transgender, who have been non-binary. The visibility has increased, but the concept, but the existence is not new, and it's important for the community to become more aware of those issues. What kind of educational materials are provided through Stand with Trans so that people can put themselves in the perspective of trans youth, put themselves in the perspective of people that may be non-binary, and learn about what goes through that experience of transitioning to, as it's marked in the description of this organization, to their authentic life?
Well, the work that we provide is really life-saving, and we've had parents and youth use those exact words with us. And the work really falls into three areas. One is education, and that could be training businesses and corporations, which we're doing more and more of. We provide parenting content, and that could be, we ran a series last year. It was Ask the Expert, and it was just on Facebook Live. So we had a variety of providers, from a pediatric endocrinologist who is a hormone provider and helps youth medically transition, to a psychologist who works with trans folks, to educators. So that's an ongoing program piece that we offer, and we try to make things as accessible as possible. The second area or bucket is direct support. And so while we don't provide therapy per se, we offer a variety of support groups, which have all moved to a virtual Zoom format over the last 18 months. And those are free. Anybody can access. We have tween group, we have teen groups, we have parent groups, we have a non-binary young adult group. So all you have to do is register. You'll get the Zoom link. It's private, and they're run by experts and trained professionals. And then the other piece of it is community and social, which has been really tough over the past year and a half. People need to connect. They need to know that they're not alone. That was one of the biggest things for us when my son came out, is that we didn't have anyone to talk to. And my son said, I don't know anyone like me. And that's heartbreaking as a parent. You know, you want your kids to fit in, you want them to have friends and to have a social life. And when people feel so isolated, and the pandemic has not helped that piece at all, it's really hard to kind of just, move through your day. You need to know that you have a community. So we have signature events. We do a winter Share the Love event, which is typically in person. We do a family picnic. This summer, we were able to squeeze that in, and we came back to our picnic, which is in the Metro Detroit area. And it's just a great day for families to hang out. We also try to provide some ongoing events for youth. A few years ago, when Pokemon Go was the rage, we had a meetup, and the kids ran all over town looking for Pokemon, and then we took them out for ice cream. So those are really, the areas, and the program is always changing. We do everything from Trans Day of Visibility events to LGBT history. Trans Day of Visibility this November will honor Trans Day of Remembrance. And so it's really just, it's giving voice, it's showing representation, and really honoring the people who are out doing the work, and that visibility shows others that, there is a light at the end of the tunnel, that they have a future. Youth feel like, well, I could never have this career because I'm trans, or I'll never get a job because I'm trans. And we show them that you can. That you can go to college, you can have an amazing career, you can have a family. I know that's one of the big things with parents. They feel like, oh, now I'm never going to have grandchildren if my child is trans or my child is queer. And that isn't true. Trans people can have families just like everyone else can. There are lots of different ways to create a family.
We're joined by Roz Keith. She is the executive director and the founder of Stand With Trans. With us on the MegaCast, learn more about her organization, this 501c3 nonprofit that's providing so many great resources and supports to the trans community and their families as well at standwithtrans.org. And so at this year's second annual Trans Empowerment Month celebration, what will be some of the featured events, the featured discussions that will be had that would be interesting for people to attend and people to take in as well at this time?
Thank you for asking that. So we have more than 50 sessions throughout the month. For anyone 24 and younger, they are all free. You register one time and you have access to the entire month. And we kick off, our keynote is with a woman named Aurora Higgs. She is a trans woman of color who's just remarkable. She's a PhD candidate. She is an advocate. She's an outspoken person who talks about trans rights, advocates. She works with Virginia Commonwealth University. She works with Virginia Planned Parenthood. And she's been kind enough to make herself available to kick off our event and talk about the importance of speaking up. And while you might be advocating for something that you need, by doing that, you're changing the world. You're helping others get what they need. We have 5 different surgeons from a multitude of practices who are going to talk about the most popular gender confirmation procedures for people who want to take the next step in their medical transition. We will have a non-binary panel that's going to, each person on the panel will talk about their coming out story. We have being trans and careers, 5 different folks who are adults. They're out trans people, and they have a variety of careers from graphic designer to automotive engineer. And they will, that's really, those kinds of panels are amazing because it shows youth that, you can follow your dreams. We're going to talk about college, how to finance it. We'll have representative trans students from a couple of different universities who will talk about being trans on campus. We'll have performances. There's a 3-part parenting series that is available, and that will be on 3 different evenings. So we have experts talking about gender diversity. We have Lisa Goyette and John Ball from Celebrate Hope, who will talk about how to manage your emotions when your child comes out, which is often one of the hardest things for parents. They're supportive and accepting, but they just don't know what to do with the feelings that they have. We have spoken word poetry. The HRC is working with us to provide a session on advocacy, so you can learn how to take matters into your own hands, whether that's writing an op-ed, going to your school board, just for a student to stand up and let a teacher know what they need. It's like I said, there are 50 plus. We don't have time here for me to list them all, but if you go to the registration page, the schedule tab will take you to the entire month, and you can scroll and see what's available. And as I said, when you register, you just choose what you want to appear on your calendar, and you'll get reminders. So you don't have to go in and register each time. It's pretty easy.
We're joined by Roz Keith. She is the executive director and the founder of Stand With Trans. Join us today to talk about the 2nd annual Trans Empowerment Month celebration through this 501c3 organization. Learn more information, register, and find out all about those many programs during the 2nd annual Trans Empowerment Month in October by going to their website at standwithtrans.org. You can also learn more information about resources that are available through the organization, such as many of those support groups, as well as information for the medical side of things as well, so you can get sound advice from people who have been through these issues, through families and through trans youth and trans adults, non-binary youth, non-binary adults who have had their life experiences and are able to put those into play here to help other people that are experiencing many similar processes right now and situations in life also. Again, that is standwithtrans.org. And Roz, I want to talk a little bit about your journey to begin this organization. So your son came out as transgender in 2013. How did your son's experience coming out and then the experience of living life as his authentic self from that point on, how did that inform your leadership of this organization and both the resources and the advocacy efforts that Stand With Trans puts forth for the trans community, the non-binary community, and others as well?
So, big question. I have to say that when he did tell me that he identified as a boy, he was assigned female at birth, I said, okay. Of course, my mind was racing. I had never heard the word transgender before, which I guess is a little ironic because now it's what I do full time. But I didn't know the word. I didn't know what it meant. I just thought he just wanted to look like a boy, and we could solve that by going out and buying different clothes, but it wasn't quite that simple. And of course, like any parent, I was concerned about hormones and medical transition and the biggest problem really through all of this in the first year was that we didn't have anyone to talk to. This was 9.5 years ago in the Metro Detroit area, and there was no one. There was not a mental health provider who was trained to guide my son. Our pediatrician didn't know anything. There were no groups. Everywhere I called, I hung up in tears because it was a brick wall. And there were a few things at U of M for 18 and over, but nothing for minors. And it was heartbreaking. And it wasn't until, maybe 10 months later when we were fortunate enough to be able to meet with an expert in Boston who spent 3 hours with us, talking to Hunter. Really, it was an in-depth consultation. And at the end of that meeting, he said, there is no question in my mind that your child is a transgender boy. And that really, was a relief for him, of course, but it gave us a lot of answers because we were hearing from an expert. We now could understand the steps that needed to be taken. And this was just a small piece of it, because knowing what the steps are and being able to access them are two different things. And a lot of people struggle with this now. They don't have access to an affirming doctor, or they don't have insurance, or parents, if it's a minor and a parent says, no, you can't get, in most cases, you can't get cross-sex hormones to transition without parent consent. And if one parent consents and the other parent doesn't consent, you still can't have access. So, we haven't solved all of that. The good news is that there is more access, more providers are being trained. Schools of social work, family counseling, psychology are all doing more. They're offering training in working with trans clients. They're educating. There are seminars. There are CEUs. There are more pediatric endocrinologists who are becoming knowledgeable. But even in medical school, there really isn't much taught. At University of Michigan now, they can take a 1-month elective, but it's not a required part. So most medical professionals don't really know what it means or understand to even treat, whether it's a child or an adult. So when we were, once we figured all of this out, and where we were approached to share our story publicly as a family, after that story aired, families were coming out of the woodwork. They identified with us. There were so many families out there who had trans kids, and they were alone. They felt isolated. They were scared. They had no one to talk to. And because they didn't, just like us, they didn't know anyone. It just, people weren't talking about it. So these kids existed. And as you said, trans people have existed for centuries, but we're only recently opening the doors to these conversations. So once the floodgates opened, we knew that parents needed support, youth needed support, and we started formulating these ideas. And that's where the idea for an organization started taking shape. And, we made the commitment. We filed our paperwork for the 501c3 and haven't looked back. We started with a community education event where we had more than 250 people attend. It was really groundbreaking because no one had ever done anything like this. Nobody was talking about trans anything. And this event gave people permission to learn and to talk about it. And one support group grew into two, before the pandemic, we had almost 12.5 support groups in person in a variety of areas in Michigan. So that's, kind of the story in a nutshell. The work is never going to end because there will always be trans people coming out. Our vision is to normalize that and to erase the stigma surrounding trans identities, because without that and without the support, there's so much trauma. And even my son said recently, who's now 22, he said, I had nothing but love. I had so much support. Everything was on my side, and I still have trauma surrounding being trans. So you can imagine for a child at home whose parents won't use their chosen name, who they refuse to change pronouns, they won't acknowledge the identity with which, this person is aligning with. Those situations create a lot of harm, and it speaks to increased rates of suicidality, harm, destructive behavior, drug and alcohol use, and it doesn't have to be. I just saw a statistic yesterday that if one person in the household uses the correct pronouns, the rate of suicidality drops by half. So, all kids, they want to be loved, they want to be supported by their family, they want to know that they're loved unconditionally, and they're not choosing this. And that's a big misconception that people have is, my child's making a bad choice, or they put a religious overtone to it and explain why it shouldn't be. But being trans is not a choice any more than having brown eyes or being 5'2". Those are not choices. And I always say, when I get in my soapbox, that the choice we have as a parent is to love and support our child unconditionally. And miracles happen when you take that route. Our kids are amazing. They're resilient. And I've just met so many inspirational people through this work who, have the confidence to just come out and be themselves. And it's a rough journey. It can be really rough, even with support. So I encourage everyone to learn more, come to the event, and just figure out how you can support your fellow human beings.
Yeah, something as simple as just using their correct pronouns can be huge, can be life-saving. And this advocacy work, the educational work, certainly the supportive work that's being provided by Stand With Trans and other organizations like it is so important, and it is becoming more important as time goes on, and as we fortunately have people in the trans community and the non-binary communities have the confidence to live their true life and be their true self and be their authentic self. But we also need that support in the greater community as well, because as we've spoken before with Dave Garcia from Affirmations, things have definitely changed, and there's been a lot of good that has changed over the years, but there's still a long way to go. And so, Roz, anything else for us today that we should know before we say goodbye about Stand With Trans, about the upcoming Trans Empowerment Month, or anything else that your organization's doing at this time?
Follow us on social media at Stand With Trans, and on Instagram, it's at Stand With Trans MI. We're on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. There's a little surprise on TikTok if you follow us there. And you can always donate. We are a 501c3 nonprofit, which means that all your donations are tax deductible. And definitely sign up for Trans Empowerment Month. The theme is Be You. It's all about authenticity, and we want to see you there.
Again, standwithtrans.org for all of that information. Roz, we appreciate it. Thank you very much for your time and for helping us inform the audience about these issues.
Thanks, Tyler. I appreciate it.